Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It's Friday, January 16th, and we got to talk about a national title game. Been a little bit of a while, apologies for the delay, but we got to talk about Miami against Indiana down there in Miami this upcoming week. On Monday for whatever reason. We'll have to talk about that next week. We'll talk about the calendar and how broken it is and a number of ways to fix that. But for the time being, we got to talk about that game. We'll break it down and I'll give you my pick for the last game of this college football season that has been as unpredictable as ever. But then we got to get to the transfer portal. We got to talk about this quarterback market that is pretty much entirely bare at this very moment. Ole Miss having a relatively big debacle towards the end of this. Texas attacking Alabama in a little bit of trouble possibly. And then the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes that seem to be getting very weird very quickly. And we'll talk about it all in the second segment. That'll be it for today. Want to make sure you guys are fully updated on everything with the portal, everything with the national title, and then we'll deal with the fallout. We'll talk about the SEC this season. We'll talk about all of the different things that Indiana has impacted going forward in roster construction and how people go about their practices. All of that will be for next week. We will get into that on Tuesday when we react to that game and we react to the college football season that is officially behind us on Tuesday. We got a little bit of time before that though, and we got to use it breaking down this game. Indiana, Miami, in Miami. This is going to be a very, very interesting dynamic. Obviously, Miami fans aren't known for packing out that stadium by any means. I'd expect it to be about 50-50, maybe even 60-40 towards Indiana. Now, the Miami crowd has done a relatively good job this year of being present, being a little bit more active. Still not the home field advantage that a lot of other college teams have for good reason. They're in an NFL stadium. The other kind of quirk here is Indiana's the home team in this game. They'll be in Miami's normal locker room, and Miami will be in the visitors. Now, in NFL stadiums, you'll find there's not much of a difference between the two. In college football stadiums, that's a little bit more up for debate. But at the end of the day, some interesting quirks as we head into this one. Miami playing in their home stadium, but not in their home locker room. Very, very interesting there. But Indiana favored by 8.5 in this game. The over-under at 47.5. This is going to be special. This is an incredible, incredible matchup. Indiana continues to be one of the best stories in sports and in college football history. Miami comes in with a lot of confidence and a team that, after those two losses, I would have told you they had no shot of getting here. I would have thought they had very little shot of making the playoff in general. They find their way in barely by the skin of their teeth, and now they find their way to the national title behind the most terrifying pass rush that you will see in the entire country that has held true throughout this entire time. But this is going to be really, really fun to watch. We'll talk about the implications of these two teams, particularly Indiana, and what they had on the future of college football, the future of roster construction, how people approach season, how people approach practices, particularly in the Indiana case, very different. The normal teams, a lot more film, a lot less on the field work. Maybe that's the way a lot of these big-time programs start to lean. And then I don't have to tell you that a lot of these both these teams littered with very, very experienced players, including those two quarterbacks. Carson Beck, in his 6th year of college football, sat behind Stetson Bennett, one of the more accomplished college football players of all time, for 2 years. This is going to be his 3rd national title game, weirdly enough. First as a starter, of course, but at the end of the day, this is going to be awesome. It's an incredible matchup between two incredible stories, two really, really good coaches, both of which were kind of dismissed as early as last year. Mario Cristobal has been dismissed for quite a while. I think he's changed that, and a national title will be the exclamation point on top of that. But let's start with some players to watch. Mohamed Toure is a player that I think has to be massive for Miami in this football game. Obviously, he is a dangerous player, but rushing the passer. The reality of this Indiana offensive line is they're not going to miss blocks, particularly in the run game. They are going to at least make contact with you. Can you shed those blocks? Can you make sure you get those running backs down quickly? Because there's a big-time stat that we'll talk about here in a second that could totally change this game. If Miami can control the line of scrimmage, win the run game battle, that comes down to the second-level players. Making those guys miss, or at least shedding those blocks and getting those running backs on the ground. It's a very, very hard thing to do. Obviously, Ahmad Moten has to handle business up front, as does Justice Scott, as does a lot of those really, really talented players they have up front. But those second-level players, Mohamed Toure, Basainth, they have to make big-time plays. They have to make tackles in open space, and they have to fill in the run game incredibly well. For Indiana, Khalil Benson is the player that I'm going to I don't want to say call out here, but highlight in this segment. Khalil Benson can make this game a blowout. I think he is the player that can totally open up this game for Indiana and make this look kind of like the last two games look. Now, I don't think it'll be that aggressive, but the reality is Khalil Benson has really struggled in pass pro throughout this playoff. He has been the guy that if you're pointing at the Indiana offensive line, you're trying to find the sore thumb, that's where you're going to point. Now, still a very good football player, is a very, very good run blocker, is a guy that you're not going to be able to, maybe you won't be able to power rush him quite as well, a little bit more susceptible to speed rushers. That is an opening. A guy like Akeem Mesidor, a guy like Marquise Lightfoot, Ruben Bain has plenty of speed about him, even being at 280. He has to show up. Khalil Benson has to be big time in pass pro. If he is, Fernando Mendoza is going to make the throws. You're going to be able to move the football, and you're going to score some points. In this game, Khalil Benson can totally change the complexion of this game, both for Indiana and against them very quickly. It all comes down to how he holds up in pass pro, and that's a relative question mark as we head into this one. But the big question for Miami as they head into this one is the same thing. You have to ask whenever you play a quarterback in the offense of this caliber, can you get there with four? Can you get pressure with four? Can you push Fernando Mendoza off his spot? It doesn't guarantee success. It gives you a numbers advantage, and that's what you have to have against this football team. The second you commit more guys to the box, the second you try to play man coverage, Fernando Mendoza is going to tear you apart with ball placement. That's what he's done all year. That's what Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper and Charlie Becker, almost blanked on his name, they've done it all year. They've dominated man coverage because people have to commit more bodies to the box, because they're so good at running the ball. They also have a Heisman-level quarterback. You have to be able to get there with four. You have to be able to hold up against the run with five, maybe six in the box, but probably five in the box, and be able to hold up against a terrifyingly good run-blocking unit. If you can do that, then you have an ability to at least keep Fernando Mendoza under wraps, at least keep everything in front of you, avoid some of those big back shoulder plays that they love to run, and keep this game in reach, and at least keep Fernando Mendoza from becoming the robot good player that he has been the last couple of games. It's really fair to say that Miami is more well-equipped to do that than any other team in the entire season that Indiana's played. Getting there with four is what they've always done. Now, not to say they don't blitz, not to say they won't blitz in this football game, but you have to set it up with a normal rush. You have to set it up with Ruben Bain, Mesidor, Lightfoot, and those interior guys just getting push, collapsing the pocket, making Fernando Mendoza feel a little bit uncomfortable, and then you get to play zone coverage, and you get to have guys like Jacoby Thomas and guys like Keontae Scott jump on balls, sit on routes, and do the incredible things that they're capable of doing because they have the opening, because they have the players around them to cover them. If they do make a mistake, if they do overcommit, that can only really happen. If you have a numbers advantage, you need to be able to rush with four to do that. So it'll be a really interesting thing to watch. How does Corey Heatherman approach this? Does he only try to rush four early? Does he try to blitz early to catch them off guard and maybe knock him off his game early and then start to rush four? It's a cat and mouse game with a very, very good quarterback. If you can't get home with four consistently, Indiana's going to be able to score. Fernando Mendoza is going to be able to have the game that he's been able to have the last, well, really the entirety of the season, if I'm being totally honest. For Indiana, it comes down to the run game. We talked about a big-time stat. The games where Indiana has been on the ropes, Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State. Those are the big three games. Obviously, Oregon kind of included in that in the regular season matchup, but they were in relative control of that game, especially after the pick six from Brendan Feeney. They ran for over 3.5 yards in all three of those games. Every game outside of that, they've rushed for over 4 yards per carry. They've dominated teams. They've rolled over teams every single week because that's who they are. If they're able to run the football, Fernando Mendoza is going to get man coverage, and he's going to tear you to pieces. That's who they are. They run a lot of RPO stuff. They keep you off balance. They make things really, really tough, and it's not normal RPO stuff, which makes that even tougher. They're really, really good. You have to stop the run. If you don't stop the run, excuse me, if you don't stop the run, this offense is going to tear you to pieces. There's really no other way about it. They're too efficient. They're too smart. They stay in front of the chains too well for you not to be able to slow down that run and have any level of success defensively. So, can Indiana stay in front of the chains? Can they find a way to run the football? Can Miami find a way to slow them down? It's elite run defense. On the other side, it's elite run offense and maybe the best run blocking offensive line in the entire country. It is the best run blocking offensive line in the entire country, but at the end of the day, it's going to be incredible to watch. The run game is massively important. The biggest hinge point in this football game is time of possession, and it comes back to the run game. Obviously, these two teams have done very well for themselves in this category. They're 5th and 6th in the country, respectively. Miami 5th, Indiana 6th, but they lean on the run. They trust their quarterbacks to make quick reads, to be smart, to get the ball out of their hands, and they slowly bury teams. That's who they are. They keep things close, and that's why I think this 8.5 line might be a little aggressive. I think you're walking into a game with two teams that are more than happy to walk the field 10 plays, 13 plays, 75 yards, 85 yards, and just drain clock. And I think that's what's going to happen. Now you got to deal with some really good defenses on the other side, but I think these offenses are very efficient. Excuse me, are very efficient, have the ability to kind of put these defenses at least in conflict throughout this football game and make things interesting. Which one of them wins that battle? How much do they win that battle by? Both of them averaging about 33 minutes per game, so about a 6-minute advantage. I can't imagine it's going to be a 6-minute advantage for any one of these teams. Is it a 3-minute advantage? Is it a 4-minute advantage? What does that look like? Which one has it? And is that the difference maker in this football game? I always lean towards Indiana controlling it a little bit more just with how efficient they have been. But I can't imagine it's going to be a massive advantage. Whichever one can put together a couple 10-play, 75-yard type drives might come out with a win here. Everyone watching this football game, they're asking one question, and I think it's a fair question given how good Indiana has been this year. What does Miami have to do to win this football game? There's a number of things, obviously, with how efficient Indiana is, with how dangerous they can be even when they aren't efficient fully. They're a really, really terrifying team. You have to play clean football. That's the number one rule. Mistake-free. If Carson Beck does not play mistake-free in this football game, if Miami plays the same football game they played against Ole Miss, they'll lose this one by 14 points. I feel pretty confident in that. They made way too many mistakes. They didn't capitalize on mistakes that were made by Ole Miss with a number of dropped interceptions, a number of penalties that put them in bad spots. It can't happen against this football team. You can't put yourself behind the sticks because it's unlikely Mark Fletcher is going to break off a 12-yard run on 2nd and 12. Or 2nd and 20, excuse me. You have to be able to keep yourself in front of the sticks. You have to be able to not shoot yourself in the foot. And Carson Beck has to avoid the quote-unquote Carson Beck game. Now, I think that's a little unfair. He only had one this season against Louisville, but at the end of the day, he's got to be great in this game. He's got to be decisive, on target, on time. If he's not, one's going back to the house the same way it did with Dante Moore in Oregon early in that game. And then you got to win the line of scrimmage. You're not going to trounce them here. This is something that just has to be known at this point. No one is going to dominate Indiana on the lines of scrimmage, particularly the Indiana offensive line on the line of scrimmage. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to dominate them. Can you give Mark Fletcher enough openings? That is a dangerous, dangerous football player. He can get skinny in a hurry. Can you find a way to give him a couple of creases, allow him to break off 10, 15-yard runs a couple of times in this football game? It does not have to be consistent. You don't have to be overly explosive in the run game. Can you find a way to push them off the line 2 yards? Mark Fletcher will pick up another 2 for you, and then you're in 2nd and 6. You do it again, you're in 3rd and 2, and you continue drives that way. That is a huge, huge piece of this. Now, a small tidbit, the Miami offensive line didn't do well in pass pro against Ole Miss. Ole Miss loves to run a lot of stunts and twists. Exact thing that Indiana loves to run. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Maybe the Indiana pass rush is the one that we need to be talking about. Maybe they can get after Carson Beck a little bit more. And he's not as mobile as Fernando Mendoza. And Fernando Mendoza isn't quite the dual threat athlete that a lot of these other guys in the country are. So Carson Beck's got to be able to make plays with his legs. That offensive line's got to play a whole lot better than they played before. But this is really special. There's so many things about this football game that are absolutely incredible to watch. I mean, the U being at the top of the sport once again, being the team that I really have never seen at this very level. I mean, the last time they had double digit win seasons back to back years was 2002, 2003. I was 2 years old, so I wasn't necessarily locked in to Miami football at that very moment. This is pretty incredible to watch. It's a really really incredible brand. It has obviously incredible alumni like Michael Irvin. I have to imagine he'll give us a number of clips on Monday night, but it's an incredible thing to watch for Indiana. It's one of the single best stories I've ever seen in my life in sports. It is absolutely remarkable what Curt Cignetti has done. It will forever be impossible to fully express how difficult this was, how difficult it is to walk into the losingest program in college football, and 2 years later, you're in a national title. You have a chance to become the first team to go 16-0 in a season. It's special. It's absolutely insane. It is a testament to Curt Cignetti. It's a testament to Mike Shanahan. It's a testament to Brian Haynes. It's a testament to every single player that walked in and out of that locker room over the last couple of years, even the ones that came before Curt Cignetti, because a lot of those guys were still around for the first year. You don't have that first year, you don't have this one. I can almost promise you that. So what Indiana has done, we'll talk about it more if they are able to finish this job. Even if they aren't, we will absolutely be talking about the legacy that this team is leaving behind. It's special in every sense of the word. It's really, really hard to describe just how incredible this has been to watch. It'll be pretty incredible to watch one more time on Monday night. But Miami being back at the top, Indiana finding their way to the top for the first time in program history, a fan base that has been starved for this type of talent. You got it. It's a really, really incredible team. I don't really get caught up in the whole how do they match up with other great teams. They're going to match up with Miami on Monday night. That's all they have to worry about, and that's all they're definitely worrying about with Curt Cignetti. But we'll discuss these two teams and this season overall more on Tuesday. We'll break down the game. We'll get into it all. I'm going to take Indiana to have a perfect finish to a perfect season and a perfect story in every single way. It's an incredible story, an incredible coach, an incredible quarterback that gives great interviews at the end of all of these games. I expect to see another great one. At the end of this one, I think Indiana wins. I do think they win the crowd battle by a little bit over the Miami fans. And I think a team that was a punchline 3 years ago, that was a joke 3 years ago in a lot of ways, they're on top of the college football world. It's insane. If I told you Indiana was a national title winner, the biggest fan of Indiana 3 years ago would have called me crazy. That's where you are, and you have a chance to go get it on Monday night. If it was Saturday night, it'd be a lot more fun, but at the end of the day, Monday night will be plenty fine for Indiana fans. I think they get it done, and I think Curt Cignetti brings home a national title in his second year as the Indiana head coach, has been a head coach in general for quite some time. This is insane in every sense of the word. We'll see if he's able to finish it off. We'll see if Miami is able to shock the world a little bit and ruin the fun for the Indiana Hoosiers. Still would be an incredible season for them and would be a very, very interesting conversation around Mario Cristobal and what he could do the rest of his career. But that's time. There's a time and place to talk about that. That's after the football game happens on Monday night. Cannot wait for that one to get underway. But we got to talk about the transfer portal. We got to get into the quarterback market. We got to get into Ole Miss losing a couple of players late in the process in a really weird way. We got to talk about Texas and Alabama and everything in between right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just broke down the national title game that is going to go on Monday. Wish it wasn't on Monday. Another thing we can talk about on Tuesday. But at the end of the day, I'm going to pick Indiana to finish off the job, to win 24-21. I think it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be an absolute war from start to finish. But I think Indiana finds a way to get out of it and go 16-0. The first team ever. Couldn't imagine I would have picked Indiana a couple of years ago if you had asked me that. But let's get into the transfer portal. It's getting weird. It's getting very, very chaotic. It closes at 11:59 tonight. There's going to be a lot of stuff that probably happens before that. Now, kids do not have to be committed by the end of today, just so everyone knows. They can kind of stay in there as long as they want. Some kids will show up at the end of April to some of these teams after spring practice is done. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, if you don't lose any more players from your team today, that's good news because they can't go anywhere after today. But let's see how this all unfolds, and we got to start with this quarterback market. It is dry. It is officially fully dry, and Dylan Raiola has kind of a lot to do with it in some sense. He finds a way over to Oregon a couple of weeks ago, and Dante Moore finds his way back to Oregon. Dylan Raiola's plan was to go to Oregon understanding that there was a very real possibility that Dante Moore came back. He still has to recover from a broken fibula, whatever that looks like for him. And he's got some things to fix. There's no doubt about that. I really respect this decision from Dylan Raiola. I think it is massively, massively smart for his future. And I think he can be a national title good quarterback in 2027. Oregon's shaping up to have a national title good team in 2026 too. So he's in good shape. I think he made the right decision. That does leave a couple of teams looking around trying to figure out their answers. Ethan Grunkemeyer currently is the top quarterback in there. He's probably going to end up at Virginia Tech, just hasn't been made official yet. We'll watch that one more as the next couple of days move on. Jake Merklinger has committed to UConn, so that one's off the board as well. E.J. Colson is a very interesting name to watch. As far as I'm concerned, an underrated player from Incarnate Word, really talented recruit when he came coming out of high school. I don't know if he ends up at a major team because the only two that really need a quarterback right now are Miami and Tennessee. One of those is pretty occupied right this second. Tennessee tried to make a push for Sam Leavitt, and then Lane Kiffin flew up to Knoxville, Tennessee, and kind of stole him away. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a very, very interesting thing to watch. Jaden Davis also in there from Michigan, very talented recruit. Austin Novosad from Oregon. I expect him to go to Kentucky with Will Stein, but still hasn't committed, so that's something to watch there. But that's about it. Everyone else is gone, unless something happens today and there's some tampering going on. Let's just call it what it is at this point. At this point, it's not really tampering because there's no enforceable rules. So we'll talk about that at another time. We'll talk about how to fix that at another time. But could Miami just go with Emory Williams? Really talented player, someone that they really like, someone that sat behind Carson Beck this year, sat behind Cam Ward last year. Wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. I think it's a very talented kid, very smart kid that fully understands that offense. Could Tennessee go with a guy like George McIntyre, really talented young player? Could they start the freshman coming in, Faison Brandon, another really talented player? Could they pull someone out by the end of the day? They got about 11 hours to pull it off if they're going to. We'll see what's happening there. And Ty Simpson was the big decision here. He's going to go off to the NFL, and love that decision from him. I'll probably talk about more of that next week, but that's a decision that not a lot of kids make. It was the right one for him. As far as I'm concerned, this quarterback class is very interesting, especially with Dante Moore out of it. I think Ty Simpson can be quarterback too, and you never really know where that guy is going to go in the draft because these teams get quarterback desperate pretty quickly. But there's time to talk about Ty Simpson and his NFL draft stock at a later date. For right now, we got to talk about Ole Miss. This is a debacle. It's a really, really weird story. It seems the Ole Miss staff, the Ole Miss administration, whoever, has kind of allowed the term sheets to get out to the players. And it was shown that a couple of transfers that came in are making more money than the guys that returned to Ole Miss instead of finding their way to LSU or to a number of other places that would have more than happily taken them in. As you can imagine, a number of guys were not happy with that. TJ Daugherty has found his way out of the program. Prince Williman Mielen has found his way out of the program. We'll see what happens with those two guys. We'll see what happens with Ole Miss today. There's still some time for some of those guys to find their way out of it. It's a massive mistake. It's something that every single program in the country is dealing with to a certain extent. Frankly, I think all of these things should be readily available to the public, but that's another thing that we have to figure out over the next little bit. At the end of the day, it's a massive mistake from Ole Miss, and Ole Miss fans keep telling me that Lane Kiffin is quote-unquote behind this. Here's the reality with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss at this very moment. The second that Lane Kiffin left, there was no bones about it. He knew, everyone knew, he was going to try to tear apart that roster. He was going to try to get all of his guys to find their way over to Baton Rouge and join the LSU Tigers. That included Kejuan Lacey, that included Trinidad Chambliss if he was to get another year, which still is up in the air. We'll see. We'll watch that very closely. But at the end of the day, he wants to poach that roster. You knew he wanted to poach that roster. You left the door open. You left the door open and the wolf got into the hen house. That's the way I see that. And now I don't know the details of this. Maybe Lane Kiffin is, hacking into things and finding contracts and releasing it to the. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think Ole Miss made a mistake. I think it gave an opening to a guy like Lane Kiffin, and he was going to take it, and he is taking it, and he's going to pick up a couple of these players, including possibly Prince William Mielen, a difference maker of an edge rusher. It's a massive mistake from Ole Miss. There's no two ways about that. I understand that Lane Kiffin has not been the kindest customer to Ole Miss since he's left there, but the reality is you had to know that this was the reality you were dealing with, and you could not give that guy the opening. You did, and you lost to a lot of really good defenders, and you got to figure out how to backfill that in not that much time and not that much supply left. The Texas Longhorns are attacking this one, and there's been already a lot of talk of how much money are they spending. I don't know what the number is. I can promise you the number is obscene. It is a crazy, crazy number because they add Cam Coleman. They get Hollywood Smothers to flip over from Alabama to Texas. They get a guy like Rasheem Biles from Pitt, really talented linebacker that is a difference maker in every single way. And you already have Colin Simmons on the roster. You already have Arch Manning on the roster. You already have Ryan Wingo on the roster. There's a lot of money going around. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anyone's confused about that from Texas because they got a whole lot of money, probably the most money in the entire country, and they're making no bones about it. 2026, they are pushing the chips into the center of the table. Also added Melvin Siani yesterday from Wake Forest, really talented tackle that likely will play the right tackle position across from Trevor Gooseby this year. I think it probably takes them out of the Jordan Seaton sweepstakes, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but they're building a really good roster. That offense looks absolutely incredible. Still a couple of holes to fix on defense at linebacker and maybe safety, but overall, it's going to be a really good football team. It's going to be a team that probably comes in as the number one team in the country, maybe Oregon, another team to watch there, and it's going to be a team that has a lot of hype, just like they did in 2025. Can they fulfill that hype this time around? We'll find out. Very, very interesting attack mode from Texas. I don't think it's remotely done. Still a couple of things to figure out on the offensive line, and then on defense, add a couple of depth pieces as well. Are the Crimson Tide in trouble? Is Alabama in a bad, bad spot moving forward? To me, it's a little bit overblown. Losing out on Cam Coleman is not ideal. Obviously not something you want. You probably weren't winning that battle, especially if it was a bidding war, which to a certain extent, I think it was. Now, I think Cam Coleman had more in mind than just that, but at the end of the day, there was a pretty penny thrown around for that guy. There's no doubt about it. Hollywood Smothers flipping really hurts as well. Both those were to the hands of Texas. Another one of those situations where that was going to be a tough battle to win. The second he got on campus at Austin, it was going to be tough to get him off it. But at the end of the day, you've made some nice additions as well. Noah Rogers, I think, is a really solid player that continues to grow and can be a very dangerous player, kind of replacing Isaiah Horton that found his way out of that room. Ty Haywood might not be a starter this year, could be a starter, very talented young player that was committed to Alabama, went up to Michigan for a year, and then has found his way back down. Really talented kid that absolutely can be a difference maker for you, maybe later on in the season, but still a very, very interesting prospect nonetheless. They've lost some big-time players. There's no doubt about that. I think we have to understand that the thing that we've always kind of gone after Kalen DeBoer for over these last couple of years is this team isn't mentally tough enough. This team isn't, physical enough at the line of scrimmage. They're not doing the things that you need to do to win at the SEC and win at the national level. But the reality is, to do that, you got to lose some players. To do that, you got to cut some of the fat. You got to lose some players that maybe aren't doing all the right things off the field. Now, it's not to say that these guys are terrible guys. It's not even to say that these aren't terrible losses for this football team. They've lost some big-time players. But that was always going to happen. There was always going to be a moment where he had to kind of just pull the lever and say, I'm going to make my roster. I'm going to create it the way that I want to. And we'll see what it looks like in 2026. I expect them to take a small step back because of the quarterback change, because of a lot of moving parts on defense. I expect them to take a slight step back. But at the end of the day, it was always going to happen, where a lot of those Saban-era guys found their way out of the program, and he found new guys to replace them with. It might not be the ideal class as of right this second, but I think Kalen DeBoer has a plan, and I don't think he's fully off of that plan just because a couple of guys found their way out of the program. Jordan Seaton, the name that everyone is watching right about now, the offensive tackle that made his way out of Colorado and maybe off to Oregon, off to Florida, Georgia, Ole Miss, LSU, Mississippi State was where he was visiting because the Colorado offensive line coach made his way down there this offseason. But it'll be really, really interesting to watch this one unfold. It was really interesting to watch it unfold in real time when he announced he was going into the portal by using a video from the Colorado creative team. Just a insane move in so many different ways. This is a really big time player and is going to be a lot of big time teams coming after them. We talked about Texas, the Melvin Siani commitment. I'd expect them to be less inclined to get into a bidding war here. I think they can still get into a little bit of a bidding war as we understand, but I wouldn't expect Texas to be a big time factor in this recruitment as we expected early on. Oregon, Florida are other teams to watch. I'd pick Oregon if I was to pick right this second. It's going to be a professional type recruitment. He's going to take his visits, he's going to go through this process, and then he's going to make a decision. And we'll see what that looks like. It'll be a lot like Cam Coleman. It'll be pretty quiet. People will be kind of guessing of what it's going to be. I think it'll be end up being Oregon. I think they'll have the money. I think they'll have the left tackle position to give him. I think that's the best fit for him. I just think that makes the most sense. So we'll see what happens there. Very talented kid. Obviously, maybe didn't go about leaving Colorado the best way that he possibly could have, but wherever he ends up, he's an absolute difference maker for that team. I'm kind of hoping it's Mississippi State just to make things fun, but at the end of the day, we'll see what happens with him and an absolute future first-round pick at offensive tackle here. And then real quickly, let's go through the top 10 portal classes. According to 247, over at On3, they do kind of an in and out. How much did you lose compared to how much you brought in? Very interesting over there as well. So if you want to go check that out, a little bit different. Indiana number 1, and they're number 7 on this list. But LSU number 1 on this list with 29 commits. We knew it was going to be a roster that got flipped over pretty good. The quarterback room is Lane Kiffin's quarterback room now. He has added 3 different transfers. Landon Clark from Elon is a guy that I'd watch out for. Very, very interesting player that can do some really, really fun things. But then they bring in Hussein Longstreet, really talented kid from USC. Sam Levitt, as Brooks Austin likes to call him, a frantic playmaker. It's going to be fun. It's going to be stressful at times for LSU. But at the end of the day, they've done a nice job on the offensive line as well, backfilling that. Going to be a really good team. Texas comes in at number 2 with only 15 commits. Love the addition of Melvin Siani. Obviously, you get elite playmakers like Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, and Cam Coleman. A lot of good things are going to happen for you. Still got some work to do, but a very good class for Steve Sarkisian and all in year for them in 2026. Ole Miss, really nice additions here. 19 commits thus far. Taj Butler is kind of an under-the-radar name, a linebacker that came over from Georgia Tech. Really talented kid and someone I think could really pop in that defense. Penn State, they got 36 commits. A whole lot of them are from Iowa State. Now, James Peoples did come in from Ohio State. Really do like that pickup. I think that's a young, talented player that probably has a little bit of juice behind him from how last season went. Oklahoma State, we talked about them. It's a whole lot of North Texas kids. It's 49 commits. It was going to be a flipped-over roster. It has been flipped over, and Caleb Hawkins is a guy that I think could tear apart the Big 12 in 2026. Then you have Ohio State here with 15 commits. Just really, really good additions. They're kind of backfilling some positions. They're obviously filling the departures of guys like Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, but they have young guys that are going to step into those roles. So it's not as, big head hunting, needing those big-time players. You just need to backfill. Now, you pick up a guy like Dominic Kelly from Georgia. I think that is a budding star at DB. I love the addition of Devin McHugh, the wide receiver from UTSA. Fast. Really, really fast. Dangerous as can be. You put him across from Jeremiah Smith, it could be really interesting very quickly over there. Indiana comes in at 7. It's calculated. It's dialed. Nick Marsh is a great, great addition. I love the addition of Shaz Preston as well. Turbo Richard is a great, great running back. Probably will add one more there. Still some work to do. They got business to take care of on Monday, and then they'll get to that. But Kentucky, number 8. Love what Will Stein has done here. Obviously, you pick up Kenny Minchie. You pick up a couple of great wide receivers. Nick Anderson could be on the way from LSU. Really talented kid that started his career at Oklahoma. That'll be a really, really fun one to watch. Notre Dame, kind of just turning up the heat the last couple of days, really. 7 commits in the last little bit. Some really, really top-tier players. Quincy Porter is a very talented rising sophomore at wide receiver, someone to watch, coming over from Ohio State. it's going to be a really good team. It's going to be a really good class. They get Boubacar Traore to come back for 2026. It's a dangerous football team. As I see it right now, Texas, Oregon, Notre Dame, those are the three teams that seem to be pushing their chips into the center of the table, and they're doing a really good job thus far. A&M, really solid job filling gaps. They're the number 10 class here with 18 commits. Love the Isaiah Horton addition, and I think they have wide receivers in that group that many people don't know the name of yet. You will know very quickly. Mainly talking about Jerome Miles there. I think he's a difference maker that did not play during his freshman year because of injury. We'll talk about it more. As we get into the offseason, we'll look forward to 2026, but the portal is heating up quickly. It's going to continue to be chaotic. Kids have to get in throughout the rest of the day. I expect that to be a chaotic next 10 hours or so, and then we'll find out where they're all heading to, what these rosters look like, and then we'll get into spring practice, and we'll figure out what all this looks like and what teams are really pushing their chips into the center of the table. I think it's very clear that the teams in Eugene, Oregon, and Austin, Texas are all the way in, and we'll see what that looks like. Maybe it looks like them playing this time next year or a week from now this time next year in the national title, but we'll get to that in time. I'm going to pick Indiana to win the national title this time around. We will be back on Tuesday to break down that game, to break down kind of the season as a whole, to get to all the craziness. Maybe some more transfer portal news will pop up that we have to talk about. A lot of stuff coming on Tuesday night, but overall, enjoy this one. It is a really fun matchup. It is two teams that are more than deserving of being here. Indiana, one of the best stories that I've ever seen on a college football field, one of the more efficient, more just dialed in football teams that you will ever watch. Miami, game wreckers all over the football field on both sides of the ball. They're difference makers, and they're guys that can totally change this game. I'm going to pick Indiana, but it's up for grabs, and it's going to be an incredible one down there in Hard Rock Stadium. Cannot wait for that one to get underway. But that'll do it for this edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff. Means the world to me, helps me out a ton. We're about to get into the offseason, so it might be a little bit downturn. Let's be honest. College football is going to be crazy enough. We'll probably do Tuesday, Thursday throughout the offseason because where else are we going to go? It's college football. We got to talk about it year-round. So we will talk about that all on Tuesday. We'll get into the craziness that I'm sure is going to happen on Monday. But enjoy it all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.